My son was dying in that hospital bed, and I realized with horror that I had never, not once in 42 years, told him I loved him. This is the story of my biggest failure as a father. I'm 70 years old. I raised a son, provided everything he needed, except the one thing that mattered most, and almost cost me everything. For 42 years, my son and I barely spoke. I thought I was being a strong father. I was actually destroying the most important relationship in my life. Let me tell you what I learned too late. I'm about to tell you something I've never admitted to anyone. I failed my son, not because I wasn't there, but because I was never really there. And men, you need to hear this. The moment my son pulled away from my touch, I knew I'd broken something I didn't know how to fix. This is for every father who thinks emotions are weakness. You're wrong. And here's why. My name is Robert. I'm 70 years old, and I need to tell you about the biggest mistake of my life. A mistake that took me 42 years to recognize. I have a son. His name is Michael. He's 42 years old now, and for most of his life, I was there physically but absent emotionally. I provided for him. I paid for his education. I taught him to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to change a tire. But I never told him I loved him. Not once. Because that's not what men in my generation did. We showed love through actions, not words. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I grew up in a time when fathers didn't hug, didn't say I love you, didn't talk about feelings. My own father never told me he loved me. He never hugged me after I turned 10 years old. And I thought that was normal. I thought that was strength. So when Michael was born, I became the kind of father I knew how to be. Distant, practical, unemotional. I thought I was raising him to be strong. I was actually teaching him that love was something to be ashamed of. I remember the exact moment Michael stopped trying to hug me. He was 10 years old, and I can still see the look on his face when I pulled away. Michael became quiet, reserved. He stopped sharing things with me. When he had a bad day at school, he didn't tell me. When he made the basketball team, he told his mother. When he got his heart broken for the first time, I found out weeks later. We lived in the same house, but we were strangers. And I told myself that was fine. That's just how fathers and sons were. We didn't need to talk about feelings. We just needed to get things done. He tried, for years, to connect with me. He'd show me his accomplishments, hoping for approval, for recognition, for something. And I'd nod, say good job, and go back to whatever I was doing. I thought I was teaching him not to need validation. I was actually teaching him that nothing he did mattered to me, that he didn't matter to me. And that's the lie that damaged us both for decades. At his high school graduation, I watched other fathers crying, cheering, hugging their kids. I sat there silent. I thought they were being weak. I was the weak one. When he left for college, I helped him pack his car. We worked in silence. When it was time for him to leave, I shook his hand. His mother was crying. Michael looked at me like he was waiting for something, hoping for something, and I just nodded and said, "Drive safe." He got in his car and left, and I went back inside feeling like I'd done my job. I'd raised him to be independent, to not need anyone, including me. The years passed. He'd call home occasionally, brief conversations. "How's school?" "Fine." "Need anything?" "No." "Okay." That was it. I thought that was normal. Healthy even. My wife would talk to him for an hour, laughing, sharing stories. Then she'd hand me the phone, and our conversation would last 3 minutes. And I told myself that was just how men communicated. Efficiently, without unnecessary emotion. Then came his wedding, and I watched him hug his father-in-law with more warmth than he'd ever shown me. That's when I started to feel it. Regret. At the reception, Michael gave a speech. He thanked his wife. He thanked his mother. He thanked his father-in-law for accepting him into the family. And then he turned to me, and he just said, "And to my father, thank you for everything." That was it. No emotion, no warmth, the same distance I taught him. And I realized, sitting there, that he'd learned too well. He'd become me, and I hated it. That night, alone in my hotel room, I cried for the first time in probably 30 years. Not because of something that happened, but because of everything that didn't happen. 42 years of moments I'd missed. 42 years of connection I'd refused. 42 years of love I'd been too afraid to express. And I didn't know if it was too late to fix it. I want to call him, to apologize, to tell him everything I'd never said. But I didn't know how. How do you apologize for 42 years? So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to therapy. Me, a 70-year-old man who'd spent his whole life thinking therapy was for weak people. And you know what the therapist asked me in our first session? When's the last time you told someone you love them? And I couldn't answer. I sat there silent because I couldn't remember. Not my son, not my wife, not anyone. I'd spent 70 years avoiding those 3 words like they were a disease. The therapist gave me homework. Write a letter to Michael saying everything I'd never said. I sat at my desk for hours, started and stopped 100 times. How do you condense 42 years of failure into words? How do you apologize for teaching your son that love was something to hide? I filled 20 pages, crossed out 19 of them, because nothing seemed adequate for what I'd done. Finally, I just called him. No letter, no plan. I just needed to say it before I lost my courage. The phone rang 4 times. I almost hung up. When he answered, I didn't have a script. I just started talking. Michael, I need to tell you something I should have said 42 years ago. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being distant. I'm sorry for making you think your feelings didn't matter. I'm sorry for every time I should have hugged you and didn't. I'm sorry for teaching you that men don't express love, because that's wrong. And I was wrong. There was silence on the other end. Long silence. And then I heard it. My son was crying. And he said something that broke me completely. He said, "Dad, I thought you didn't love me. I thought I wasn't good enough for you." And in that moment, I realized the depth of damage I'd done. My son, this incredible man, thought he wasn't worthy of love, because I'd been too much a coward to say 3 simple words. I drove to his house that night. When he opened the door, I hugged him, really hugged him, for the first time since he was a child. And I told him I loved him. We talked for 5 hours that night. He told me about all the times he needed me emotionally and I wasn't there. His first breakup, his struggles in college, times he was depressed and didn't tell anyone because he'd learned from me that emotions were weakness. Every story was a knife to my heart, because I could have helped. I could have been there. But I've been too busy being strong to actually be his father. He showed me pictures from over the years. And in every single one, you could see it. The distance between us. Even when we were standing right next to each other, there was this gap. This emotional chasm I'd created and maintained for decades. And I saw what I'd been blind to. I hadn't been protecting him by being emotionally distant. I'd been damaging him. Teaching him that love was something to be ashamed of. That was 3 years ago. We've been rebuilding ever since. It's not easy to undo 42 years of damage, but we're trying. We meet for coffee every Sunday now. We talk about real things. His marriage, his fears, his hopes. And I tell him things I never told anyone. My own struggles, my regrets, my fears. And you know what happened? We became friends. Not just father and son, actual friends. Something we never were before. Because I was finally being real with him, finally being vulnerable. Last year, Michael had a son, my grandson, and when they handed me that baby, I looked at Michael and said, "I'm going to do better with him than I did with you." And Michael said something I'll never forget. He said, "No, Dad, you're going to do it right with both of us. It's not too late." And he was right. It's never too late to start showing love. I hold my grandson and I tell him I love him. Every time I see him, and Michael watches with this look of sadness and happiness mixed together, because he's seeing what he missed, but he's also seeing that it's changing, that the pattern is breaking, that his son will grow up differently than we did. My grandson will know his father loves him. He'll know his grandfather loves him. He won't have to spend 40 years trying to earn something that should have been freely given from day one. Now, every time I see Michael, I hug him, and I tell him I love him. At first it was awkward. We'd both been emotionally constipated for so long. But now, it's natural. It's what we should have always done. And I watch other fathers with their sons. I see them making the same mistakes I made. Standing rigid at Little League games. Shaking hands instead of hugging. Using sports and weather to avoid real conversation. And I want to grab them and shake them. I want to tell them, "You think you're being strong. You're being stupid. You're wasting time you can't get back. And your son will remember. Last month, I had a health scare. Nothing serious, but it reminded me that I'm 70 years old. Time is running out. And I thought about what would have happened if I died before that phone call 3 years ago. My son would have spent the rest of his life thinking I didn't love him. That would have been my legacy. Not the house I bought, not the money I saved, but a son who thought he wasn't worthy of his father's love. I look in a mirror now, and I see a 70-year-old man who wasted 42 years being afraid. Afraid of what? Of looking weak? Of being vulnerable? Of showing emotion? What kind of strength is it that requires you to damage the people you love most? That's not strength. That's cowardice dressed up in masculinity. And almost cost me my son. So I'm telling you this story because I don't want you to wait 42 years. I don't want you to almost lose your child before you wake up. If you have a son, tell him you love him. Today, not when he graduates, not when he gets married. Today, if you have a daughter, tell her. If you have parents you haven't said it to, call them tonight. I don't care how awkward it feels. I don't care if it's not what your family does. Do it anyway, because the alternative is spending decades regretting what you didn't say. My generation was taught that men don't express emotion, that we show love through providing, not through words or affection. And we've raised a generation of sons who feel emotionally abandoned by present fathers. That stops now. With you. With your kids. You can break the pattern I'm trying to fix at 70. It's 3 words. 3 words that change everything. I love you. Say them until they feel natural. Say them until your kids know, beyond doubt, that they matter. I write to Michael now. Actual letters. Telling him things I should have said years ago. How proud I am. How much I admire him. How watching him be a father shows me the man he became despite my failures. Every letter ends the same way. I love you, Dad, because I'm making up for 42 years of silence. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure he never doubts it again. He told me last week that he keeps every letter I've sent him, that sometimes, when he's having a hard day, he rereads them, because he spent 40 years not knowing if I loved him, and now he has proof. Written proof that he can hold on to. That's what our kids need. Not just our presence. Our expressed, undeniable love. Last Thanksgiving, we all gathered at Michael's house, and I watched 3 generations of men hugging, laughing, saying I love you freely. The cycle is broken. My grandson is 2 years old now, and he runs to me with his arms up, wanting to be held. And I pick him up every single time. I hold him. I tell him I love him. I tell him he's special. I give him what I should have given Michael. And Michael watches. And sometimes I see him crying. And I know he's grieving the grandfather his son has that he never had. But he's also happy, because the pattern is broken. His son will never wonder if he's loved. Michael and I sat on his porch last week, and he said, "Dad, I forgive you. For all of it." And I said, "I'm still working on forgiving myself, because I can't get those 42 years back. I can't undo the damage I did, but I could do better now. And I could tell other fathers, don't make my mistake. Don't wait until it's almost too late. If I could go back and change one thing, it wouldn't be my career choices or financial decisions. It would be the first day I didn't hug my son when he needed it. Your son is watching you right now, wondering if you're proud of him, wondering if you love him. And he won't ask, because you've taught him that men don't ask for affection. So I'm asking for him. Please, tell him, show him. Before 42 years pass and you're where I am, try to fix what never should have broken. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't building my career or facing my own mortality. It was admitting to my son that I'd failed him, that I'd been wrong for 42 years, that the way I was raised was wrong, that strength isn't silence, it's vulnerability, that real men don't hide their emotions, they express them. That was the hardest and the most important thing I've ever done. After you finish watching this, I want you to do something. Pick up your phone, call your son, or your father, or whoever you need to say this to, and say the 3 words I wasted 42 years avoiding. I love you. Don't explain it. Don't justify it. Don't make it complicated. Just say it, because life is short, and the people we love need to know they're loved. Not assume it. Not guess it. Know it. Beyond any doubt. I'm 70 years old. I wasted 42 years being emotionally unavailable to my son, and I'm spending the rest of my life making up for it. But you don't have to waste a single day. You can start today, right now, this moment. Don't wait until your son is 42 and wondering if you ever loved him. Tell him today. Tell him every day, because nothing, absolutely nothing, is more important. Time is the one thing we can't get back. I can't get back 42 years, but you still have today. Don't waste it. My son forgave me. My grandson will grow up knowing he's loved. And I'll spend the rest of my days making sure that the men in my family never again confuse silence with strength or emotional distance with masculinity. This is my legacy now, not the career I built or the money I saved, but 3 generations of men who know how to love each other out loud. So please, learn from my mistake. Don't be like me. Don't wait until your son is in a hospital bed. Don't wait until you've damaged something that takes decades to repair. Say it today. Say it tomorrow. Say it every single day. I love you. Because those 3 words, they change everything. They heal everything. They are everything. And they're the only words that truly matter in the end. This channel shares real stories from real people who've lived long enough to know what matters. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with a father who needs to hear it. And then call your son or your dad and say what needs to be said before it's too late. The form in the description is open if you have a story that needs telling. Thank you for listening to mine.